Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
Today, we're taking a close look at a stack of sources discussing a really critical period for Manchester United. We're talking their potential summer transfer window, and it's all building towards that crucial Europa League final.
Yeah, and these sources, they really cover a lot of ground. You've got some sharp debate in there, really insightful analysis, some pretty strong personal opinions too, and even a forecast included in the material. It captures the intensity of this period well, I think.
Absolutely. So our mission, really, is to unpack all of this for you. What do the sources actually highlight as the key positions needing reinforcement? Who are the specific players being talked about? And what's the strategic direction, the analysis around the new manager? We're going to try and dive into all those layers.
Exactly, and you'll see these different viewpoints, on it, who they might sign, how current players are rated, and just how vital this whole upcoming period is seen for the club's, well, future direction.
Okay, let's get into it then. Let's unpack what the sources reveal about the potential ins and outs at Old Trafford. And we should probably start with a potential signing that, according to some reporting in the material, looks incredibly close, like really close.
That would be Matheus Cunha, right. The report even used the classic, "here we go," which, usually signals things are pretty far down the line.
Right. And the analysis, the reaction to this potential arrival in one source was, well, pretty enthusiastic. One creator was apparently absolutely buzzing about it.
Yeah, and it's worth digging into the why behind that feeling, based on the analysis. Cunha's described as, prem proven, which is seen as a big plus.
Although they do add he's still got points to prove, right, at that very top level.
Exactly. But the key things he brings are highlighted: athleticism, technical ability, goals, assists. And crucially, that playmaking ability that the team seems to be crying out for, according to these sources.
Yeah, one source even points out his potential for, team of the year contention. Even playing for Wolves, that's quite a shout.
It is, and what's fascinating in the analysis is this specific stat they pull out. He's apparently outperformed his XG by more than any other player in the league. And the insight there, the argument is, look, in a United team that sources say struggles to create chances, having someone who can sort of make something out of nothing, turn those half chances into goals, like his XG suggests, well, that's maybe a repeatable skill, not just luck. It's seen as a critical missing piece.
There's also a strong personal opinion shared in there that he has the minerals, the ego, the right attitude for Man United, drawing a comparison to Bruno Fernandes when he first arrived. That kind of mentality.
Yeah, that argument that you need that sort of mental strength to handle the pressure cooker at United. And then looking at the analysis of his fit in Amorim's potential new system, the sources note his versatility. He's played in back five systems as a 10-9 off the wing.
Right.
And Amorim's system is described as being big on left 10, right 10, so that flexibility makes him a really valuable asset, tactically speaking.
So this potential Cunha signing, based on the analysis and opinions we're seeing, it's viewed as a really positive first step, bringing those specific qualities the team is seen to lack, especially in that creative attacking midfield spot.
Which leads us quite nicely, actually, to what the sources highlight as probably the single biggest issue facing the team.
Goals, creativity, creating chances. It's just everywhere in the material, isn't it?
Yeah, consistently identified. And the analysis suggests they need minimum 2 or 3 signings just in those front 3 positions. It's a big rebuild needed up front.
Okay, so who are the names being discussed for that center forward role? One name is mentioned as the most likely option.
That's Liam Delap. He comes up as the most likely, according to the sources we looked at.
And the analysis of Delap, it paints this picture of a player who's like the prototype of a center forward that thrives in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Bullish, strong, holds players off, direct, got a good nose for goal.
Yeah, and apparently has a bit of an edge, too, which is seen positively. They compare him to, Diego Costa, Wayne Rooney, suggesting that bit of fight, that personality they might need.
And here's the debate, the worry that comes through in the sources. Is it just all too soon for him?
Right. The analysis points out, look, leading the line for Ipswich is very, very different to doing it for Man United.
So the big question, the debate is, can he immediately give you 20 goals a season at this level?
Yeah.
His quality isn't really doubted, but that immediate impact is the question mark.
So moving from the most likely to maybe the dream signing, Viktor Osimhen. described quite simply as the dream center forward.
Okay, why the dream? What does the analysis say?
Well, according to the analysis, he's got the least question marks. He's seen as the most surefire bet for goals, like guaranteed goals from day dot. His heading ability is particularly praised. No one is better, apparently. Runs the channels, occupies defenders, just a general nuisance.
Okay, sounds great. So why is he likely just a dream? The analysis covers that too, I assume.
Oh, yeah. High wages, reportedly not willing to reduce them, and Saudi Arabia is seen as potentially the most likely destination for him.
Right.
His injury history gets a mention, but it's interesting. The source calls them freakish injuries, eye socket, shoulder, malaria, suggesting maybe not chronic underlying problems. Still a factor.
Okay, so maybe not Osimhen. Another potential option discussed is Viktor Gyökeres. He's seen as sort of a blend.
Yeah, exactly. The analysis views him as a blend between Delap and Osimhen, somewhere in the middle.
And what are his strengths, according to the analysis?
Highlights are his eye for goal, a ruthless finish, and there's this specific note that he takes pens as if like Alan Shearer takes pens.
Ah, okay. High praise for his penalty technique.
Definitely emphasizes that confidence and power from the spot.
But again, there's debate, right? Doubts expressed in the sources.
Yes. Those incredible numbers, 136 goals and assists in 2 years. One source is skeptical, sees them as potentially inflated. A pretty blunt personal assessment shared. That's messy stuff. And you are not messy level. So, yeah, clear skepticism there.
Interesting. And there's even a forecast linked to the Europa League final.
Yeah, the forecast based on the source material suggests Gyökeres might get the nod over Delap if they win the Europa League. So that final could directly impact who they go for.
Right, that makes sense. Shifting slightly, another name just sort of thrown in there is Jean-Philippe Mateta. Not a huge name, but fits a profile.
Exactly. The analysis focuses less on him being a star and more on how he fits a specific profile they might need. He's described as someone better at warning somebody else into play or chesting the ball down. Good for a team that maybe doesn't dominate the ball.
Ah, okay. Like a target man.
Yeah, and there's a specific anecdote used from a City game, Sean Dyche commenting, "Stick the ball to the big man, play off him," illustrating that exact quality. He plays in the Prem, scored goals, seen as putting a bit of fear in center backs. It's presented as a good profile for where United are right now.
Gotcha. And then there's Patrick Schick, called an unbelievable goal scorer.
Yeah, the stats shared are pretty impressive. 27 goals in 45 games since his injury, a league goal every 80 minutes this season, which is better than Mbappe's 97.
Wow.
9 years experience, 29 years old, praised for tidy finishing.
But there's a but, isn't there? The analysis and debate focus on
whether he's someone who can, dominate an entire defense like a Gyökeres or Osimhen might. And crucially, he plays for a very, very creative Leverkusen side. So the question raised is, how does that amazing goal output translate to a Man United team that, according to the sources, is less creative?
Okay, so that leads to this potential transfer strategy emerging from the debate, maybe signing both Delap and Schick.
Exactly. For a combined lower fee, estimated maybe 50-55 million total, Schick might be around 25-30 million euros. The argument is Schick's experience takes pressure off young Delap. And Leverkusen, given his age and contract, might be tempted to sell. It's presented as a potentially shrewd move.
So what seems really central to this whole striker debate in the sources is the profile they need. It's not just about any goal scorer.
No, there's a strong point made in the analysis. United needs someone used to not getting that much service, someone who has to make something out of nothing sometimes.
Because, as noted, the team doesn't create loads of chances.
Right. It's about finding someone who can turn a half chance into a big chance.
Yeah.
Delap, Mateta, even Ollie Watkins is mentioned as an example, someone who turns rubbish balls into good balls. That specific ability is deemed a crucial criteria United need to look at.
And this point connects to a wider frustration mentioned in the material, doesn't it? About club philosophy.
Yeah, frustration with this trend of always looking for young players who might be ready in 4 years instead of signing proven quality ready now. They bring up examples like Costa or Van Persie signings in the past. And Jim Ratcliffe and Gary Neville are quoted wanting more proven quality, echoing that sentiment and fueling the debate.
Okay, interesting stuff. Let's switch gears then from up front to the right wing back dilemma, which the sources highlight as a particularly tricky position to fill, especially for the system. Frimpong mentioned as perfect, but probably going elsewhere.
Yeah, sounds like he's off the table. And there's a very strong personal opinion shared about Diogo Dalot as the starter. Basically, definitely not. Pretty blunt.
Okay, so the analysis points to Amorim's system. Wingbacks are crucial, right?
Arguably the most important aspect of any three-at-the-back system is how it's described. And historically, Amorim's used inverted wingers there, but the analysis suggests the expectation is he'll move towards more attacking wingbacks in his second season.
Which brings Amad Diallo into the conversation as a potential candidate, maybe the full-time right wing back.
That's the speculation in the sources, yeah. The analysis notes he played his best football there this season, receiving the ball, facing forward, running at people.
But there's a dilemma raised in the analysis.
Yeah.
A potential problem.
Yes. The system often drops into a back five defensively. If Amad is playing as a conventional right back, not a wing back, he's getting the ball in his own half most of the time. And the sources suggest he could get frustrated doing that. The system really needs to be a proper back three with the wing backs pushed high, like wingers or midfielders, for Amad to really thrive there.
So it depends on the tactical setup. What about Diallo again? His reliability.
Yeah, his ever-present nature is mentioned as something managers value. So one scenario discussed is maybe no dedicated RWB assigned. Delap stays as the main guy, maybe rotates with Amad. It's that debate. Reliability versus the specific attacking profile needed for the system.
Are there other options mentioned? Other types of players?
A few. Players already doing the role, like Dumfries, Munoz, Caboret. Knight Nori is seen as a real specialist. But the market's described as slim for these guys. Dorby's name comes up, recently signed, probably for the left, but Amorim apparently tried him at RWB initially, so maybe an internal option.
And even academy potential.
Yeah, a quick mention of a player called Man Utd, playing RWB in the academy, same age as a player Amorim used at Sporting called Quenda. Could be a baby Quenda situation. Might get a look in preseason. Someone worth keeping an eye on, according to the source.
Okay. And the relevance for you, the listener, connects back to that earlier point about midfield creativity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That lack of creativity from the middle, according to the analysis, just makes it even more important to get that attacking drive and creativity from the wingbacks, like an Amad potentially could.
Which leads to a specific target suggested in the sources.
Yeah.
Andrew Rijswijn Rayo from Rayo Vallecano.
Yeah, Rayo. And the analysis is quite enthusiastic. He's described as 6'2", physical specimen, and the way he drives with the ball is seen as so exciting.
Linked with Brighton and Spurs.
Apparently, yeah. Prompting an intercept call from the source, suggesting he's a hot prospect others are circling. His stats look good, too, from right back. 2.3 dribbles per 90. Only Amad has more in the current squad. Created the third most chances for Rayo. Top 5% of fullbacks for carries into the box. Seen as fitting the system really effectively.
And this highlights that debate on transfer strategy again, doesn't it? The cost factor.
Exactly. Valued around 12 million euros. He's presented as a perfect example of that lower cost risk. Signing, the sources argue United need to make more of. Like Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth do. Finding gems. The hope is you find your next Osimhen, although hopefully you don't sell them quite so quickly.
Yeah.
And the point is made, look, United still have enough prestige to attract players from clubs like Rayo Vallecano or Valencia for these kinds of value deals.
Okay, let's shift focus again into central midfield,
Right.
an area the sources highlight as having, significant struggles and needing a different type of player.
Yeah, and the focus lands pretty heavily and negatively on Manuel Ugarte. The descriptions from the sources are pretty stark, lots of personal opinion coming through. A big disappointment. One source saying, not a fan. Another admitting they were expecting it not to work out.
Oof, strong critique then. What's the basis for it in the analysis?
Well, Enrique's comments at PSG about him not fitting his system are called the biggest red flag ever. The decision to sign him for $50 million despite that is labeled unbelievable. One source bluntly calls him PSG's worst midfielder.
Wow. Well, they acknowledge he tries hard, though.
Yeah, tries, works hard, that comes across. But the analysis is critical of his actual quality for what United need. He's seen as best used maybe last 20 minutes you bring him on to close out a game, not a starter.
A liability on the ball in the Premier League is a phrase used, which is pretty damning.
Very. And more critique follows. Amorim, his ex-manager, apparently subs him off a lot. He's a walking yellow card. And the personal opinion shared is doesn't feel like Amorim has any special love for him and will likely quickly try and replace him.
The whole destroyer idea is debated too, right?
Yeah, for years the narrative was United needed a destroyer. They got one, but now one source argues destroying is overrated. The analysis says he hacks a lot, high tackle attempts, low success rate, not seen as a dominant ball winner, not athletic enough to cover large spaces like a Conte or Rice.
Good in tight spaces, struggles in large spaces. Called a little chihuahua.
That's the description, yeah. Not exactly flattering.
So the conclusion on Ugarte from the sources is pretty clear then.
Unambiguous, really. He's not starting next year in your Dream 11. One source puts him firmly in this Nightmare 11.
Okay, well, shifting from that critique to what the sources present as the dream scenario, Adam Wharton is the name, the dream central midfield sign.
Yes, and the personal opinion shed about Wharton is just overwhelmingly positive. One source literally says, I think I'm in love with this player.
High praise. What makes him so good according to the analysis?
So good. Fits the system, fits the formation, great on the ball, passes forward all the time, can break lines, just looks comfortable. His defensive side is seen as very underrated, and his intelligence for his age is called unreal.
The assessment goes even further, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. This guy can play for any team in the world. Bold claim, he could go real mad start. He's apparently that good.
And there's a comparison drawn to past United greats.
Yeah, seen as the next lineage of Michael Carrick and Roy Keane. Someone comfortable on the ball, assures you, can calm you down, that kind of presence. The forecast is it's not going to be long until he's an England starter, maybe giving England that Eurocentric feel they sometimes lack.
The source acknowledges the potential overhype critique, but stands firm.
Absolutely. They know it sounds like hype, but they believe it based on what they've seen.
Okay, but then comes the reality check in the sources. Cost.
Immense costs, likely the entire summer budget and all. It's noted that for United to even be in the conversation if he becomes available, they need to position themselves as a desirable destination, like Arsenal did strategically to get Declan Rice ahead of others. You need to lay the groundwork.
Right. While we're on English midfielders, Kobbie Mainoo's season is discussed. It's seen as kind of sad his development wasn't seamless, given the team's struggles.
Yeah, described as a terrible team this year, which makes it hard for a young player. And there's mention in the sources of debate around writing him off, discarding him, with the criticism that young players get treated like toys sometimes.
There's a reminder he's only 19, right? Still growing. Maybe looked a little too stocky this season.
Exactly. And that a sophomore season, a bump in the road, is normal. Points out players like Yamal maybe make us forget that usual development path.
What about the analysis of his actual struggles on the pitch?
Points to difficulties fitting the system, doesn't seem a clear fit for the pivot or the number 10 role. Injuries were a big factor too. Didn't have a preseason and then he got injured again, spent time just in the gym. Plus, the new manager, Amorim, wanting defensive assurance, raises concerns in the sources about his immediate fit with Amorim's plans.
So currently not in the Dream 11s discussed, which is a big shift from 12 months ago. And a contract dispute mentioned too.
Yeah, that's noted as another complicating factor.
But there is still hope expressed for him in the sources. A positive forecast.
Definitely. Need to see Amorim's plans in preseason, hope for a long break, rest, good preseason, come back strong. There's a firm, never-losing faith message about his potential, acknowledging that circumstance and injuries really hampered him this year.
Okay. Let's introduce another midfield target mentioned. Matheus Cunha, seen as fitting that need for a multifunctional player.
Yeah, multifunctional, multifaceted, someone who can do a little bit of everything. The analysis really emphasizes the need to boost the overall athletic level of the team. Need more ball carriers, more athletes, just guys who just have legs. Qualities Casemiro, Ugarte, Bruno are seen as lacking.
And Cunha fits that. What's the analysis on him?
Says he's gone so under the radar at Roma after his time at Mönchengladbach, emerged under Ranieri this year, seen as someone who can carry the ball forward, pass through the lines, defensively solid, add something in the final third. Ticks a lot of boxes for that profile.
But there's a debate or concern about system fit again.
Yes. Does he fit in this pivot in midfield, especially alongside Bruno? Worry he could get isolated if not used in a specific structure like at Roma. And that general difficulty of translating players from 4-2-31 or 433 systems into this one is mentioned again.
Okay. And one final suggestion for midfield is Javier Guerra from Valencia, presented as another potentially smart buy.
Yeah, Guerra. The analysis highlights him as a key player in Valencia's big turnaround this season, from 19th to 12th. He's 22, 6'2", physically developed, getting talked about in Spain.
What's his main strength, according to the analysis?
Really praised for carrying the ball through midfield, something the sources argue United desperately lack, being too static, predictable, relying only on Bruno for progression. Guerra can apparently beat a man more comfortably, drive with the ball, solid defensive numbers too.
And he's performed against good opposition.
Yeah, Had big games against top midfields like Sociedad Zubimendi, Brace Mendes, where he absolutely dominated them. Top 4% of U21 players for passes forward. He looks forward, plays forward, drives forward.
So seen as a really, really smart addition that wouldn't cost the earth.
Exactly. Valued around 12 million euros. Another example of that lower cost risk strategy the sources advocate for. And again, the point that United should still have the prestige to pull off deals like this from clubs like Valencia.
Right. Now, before we wrap up our look at all these transfer debates and analyses, the sources spend quite a bit of time on the Europa League final against Spurs, highlighting just how huge it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth noting the source material did include a forecast for the final, specifically boasting a Manchester United win.
Okay. Well, prediction aside, what the material really digs into is what's at stake in that game. And the analysis is pretty intense, right? Paints a picture of huge pressure.
Huge. It means everything is the word used. For the fans, the club, next season's planning, and crucially, the transfer window we've just spent ages discussing, described simply as do or die.
Yeah. And there's that powerful contrast drawn with the 2008 Champions League final.
Right. Back then, with Ronaldo, Rooney, that whole team, the feeling described was, we'll be back here. Win or lose, they'd get another shot. This time, the feeling described in the sources is totally different. A genuine worry like, we don't know if we're going to be back if we lose this. Much more precarious.
The sources suggest a lot hinges on this for the manager's future, too.
Yeah, that his future heavily relies on this. It's called a proper finale. One creator even shared a strong personal opinion, suggesting they might actually retire from covering the team if United lose. Just shows the emotional weight attached to it.
Wow. And there's that interesting comparison made. Champions League historically means more is remembered longer.
But this Europa final, the argument goes, it almost matters less historically, but in this specific moment, it matters so much for both United and Spurs, given their difficult seasons and everything riding on it for next year.
Okay, let's try and bring this deep dive to a close then.
Phew. Yeah, we've definitely unpacked a lot there. A really fascinating look into United's summer prospects, the Europa League stakes, all through that lens of debate, analysis, personal opinion, and even forecasts from your source material.
We really have. We've heard the discussions on signings like Cunha, that big striker debate, Delap, Osimhen, Gyökeres, Mateta, Schick, the complex right wing back situation with Delap, Ahmad, Rashu, and that critical midfield need, contrasting the Ugarte critiques with dream targets like Wharton, Kone, Guerra, and reflecting on Matheus' tough season.
And finishing with those immense, almost existential stakes described for the Europa League final.
What's really fascinating, I think, is how the sources highlight not just players, but that crucial debate around fitting specific profiles.
Yeah, and the analysis of how players might adapt to the manager's system, balancing proven quality versus potential, all filtered through strong personal opinion and even those forecasts.
It definitely raises a big question for you listening. Given all this debate presented in the sources, the different player profiles, the team's needs, how would you prioritize building the squad? Do you lean towards that call for more proven talent, ready now? Or do you embrace some of those higher potential, maybe lower cost risks?
It's a tough balance. So what does it all mean? Well, it means the summer looks set to be a period of really significant decisions, potentially huge changes at Old Trafford, ideally guided by a clear philosophy, but definitely debated fiercely by everyone watching closely, and all underscored by what happens in that massive final.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep exploration of the source material.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time.